Welcome to Holy Health, the podcast where cutting-edge health insights meet timeless biblical wisdom. Join us as we explore the latest in wellness, fitness, and mental health, all while grounding our journey in the spiritual truths and guidance found in the Torah. Whether you're looking to nourish your body, mind, or soul, we'll help you live a life of balance, vitality, and faith. Tune in to discover how to achieve holistic health through the perfect blend of modern science and ancient wisdom. Let's dive into the fullness of life, body, and spirit together. Hey guys, welcome back to the Holy Health Podcast. This week's episode, which deals with pain, is probably one of the quickest turnarounds we've had in a very, very long time. I was fortunate to record this episode with Dr. Amy Baxter probably only about a week and a half or so ago, and the stars just aligned. I found my perfect person for this Torah Extra, and we were able to really get this episode out within just a couple of weeks. And as you'll hear when I speak with Dr. Baxter, I sought her out because I had a specific person, someone close to me in mind, who's been suffering with a lot of pain. And I would like today's episode to really be in the merit that anybody who is suffering pain should have a full recovery, a refuah shlema. And that goes for anybody who needs to hear it. Pain is so varying. There are reasons for it. And you're going to hear a lot of things about pain that you probably never knew before. And that's a good thing. You should hear everything. Like I like to say, you should hear everything and you should make your decisions about what you're going to do from a place of knowledge. So I really think that today's episode will enlighten you guys with things that you've probably never heard before. So I want to tell you a little bit about Dr. Amy Baxter, but before that, I want to apologize. Those of you in Israel know today that all of a sudden it's the beginning of the May, but the weather has all of a sudden gone wacky. And all of a sudden, from a few minutes before recording the Torah Extra, recording this intro now, I started having, I guess, a terrible allergy attack, even though I don't really have allergies. So if you hear me sounding congested, it has something to do with that. If I sound like I'm crying a little bit in the extra, it really has a little bit of something to do with that. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but we're going to roll with it. So Dr. Amy Baxter is a pediatric emergency physician. She's a pain researcher and an innovator dedicated to transforming how we understand and treat pain. She's the founder of Pain Care Labs and the creator of Buzzy, a widely used drug-free pain relief device. A sought-after speaker, she's also a TEDx presenter where she shares her groundbreaking insights on the neuroscience of pain and how mindset, context, and the brain play a central role in how pain is experienced. So you guys know, those of you who have been with us for a while, how much I love the Torah insights of every single person who comes on here. Because every single person has their own take. They make it different. They make it special. But I love Idan Green today. She's Idan Green Yarmish. Idan has actually been doing this since she was only 21 years old with us. Today she's 25. And currently she's working as a logistics coordinator for a nonprofit organization and the program director for Torah Cafe, a Torah learning program for young professionals in Jerusalem. She continues to pursue her dream of becoming a full-time Torah educator. She's currently living in Ariel with her new husband. So I think you guys are going to enjoy today's episode. As always, I love feedback. Feel free to give me some. And today I'm going to do something that I've thought about for a while and never done. I often come up with additional questions after I'm done having my conversation with our main speaker. And this time I felt like there were one or two questions I really needed answered. So I wrote Dr. Baxter an email, and she answered a couple of things for me via email. So if you're interested in hearing what those extra questions were, stay on after the Torah Extra, and there's just going to be another couple minutes with some of these questions that I had answered. So I hope you guys enjoy. Please continue to follow us. Many of you I send this link to every week, and you never follow through and click on YouTube and follow us on YouTube, or click on, the Buzzsprout link and take it through to Apple or Spotify and then follow us there. But when you do, our podcast continues to grow. It is growing, but many of you are still not following. So please do me a favor, hit that follow button. And wherever you're listening, feel free to drop us a comment. That also helps trigger these algorithms that everything is run on today. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom. Everyone, I am so excited to have Amy Baxter here with me today to talk about pain. It's something most of you have experienced. I work with it every day. I'm a physical therapist. And for a variety of reasons, I felt like we all needed to understand the science behind pain. So, Amy, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure to talk about pain.
Okay, great. Can you just explain to people? I would say let's just start off. Everybody knows what pain is because everybody's experienced it, but I don't think people really realize that pain is more than just a feeling, that it's actually a signal that comes from the brain. So could you just explain to us a little about that?
And I would even go further. So the International Association for the Study of Pain, I'm going to paraphrase, but they came up with the definition that pain is the experienced or the anxiety about real or imagined tissue damage. So you don't even have to have tissue damage to be experiencing pain. And it can be something, a needle stick is pain. It is tissue damage and it's real. And so having the emotional response to real or threatened tissue damage is pain. What I think the biggest learning I've had in the last decade is that pain is a survival system, just like your immune system. So pain is a system and it is to keep you safe. And it may not be pleasant having some of the alarms go off, just like the immune system of having a mosquito wheel up and the itching or having inflammation from an infection. Those aren't pleasant, but they're part of a system that's there to keep you safe.
That is true. So let me ask you, number one, why do you think that different people experience pain differently? For example, some people seem to have a much higher tolerance to pain, and other people seem to be, I call them the princess and the pea. I'm a physical therapist. Like I said, I work with a lot of different populations of people. And you just notice that there are some people who you have to hold back because for them, pain is just at a much further point, to the point they almost could be causing damage, versus some people, they feel everything.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole bunch of different answers to this because, again, it's a very complicated system. So there certainly are genetic predispositions for people who have a melanocortin 3 gene. They can feel a tiny touch of a filament. They can feel it sooner than other people. So there are different thresholds that are genetic. But a lot of pain is going to be what you've experienced in the past. Because if pain is your safety system, then it means you need to understand context before it's happened. The potential for tissue damage. So you need to be aware when you're in a situation that something could go wrong, and that increases fear, and that increases your perception of pain, and then it also increases it going into your hippocampus and remembering pain. So all of these little pathways that come over time will end up adding to what your perception of pain is. So different people are going to perceive pain differently, also because of the meaning of pain. There's one great study that found that the amount of morphine that people who had a femur fracture on the battlefield needed compared to the amount of morphine people in trauma in a car wreck had was about a third less on the battlefield, because that pain meant they were going home. And so there's also the meaning, you can tolerate and a lot more pain if you're showing off to somebody. You can tolerate more pain if it's something that's in the context of something good. For example, if you are knocked down unexpectedly by a really large person in a dark alley, that is going to hurt a lot more than if you're knocked down by that exact same person in exactly the same force, but you're holding a football and you've just scored the winning touchdown. So pain is a combination of previous history, its current meaning, it's how much you're paying attention to it at the time, And it is fear of what the damage is. I think it's also an element of how much you're paying attention to it, because I haven't ever tested this, but any scientist watching is welcome to do so. I would imagine that I'm able to cope with pain better because I have ADHD. I tend to get distracted easily enough that I don't continue paying attention to pain. The longer you pay attention to pain, the more you worry about it, the more your brain says this could be a problem.
I'm laughing because I'm like you and I'm a big believer in distracting. So let's just say, for example, even as a 12-year-old, if I'd be babysitting, let's say for little kids, and it was kind of scary at night because it was dark out, I always believed in distracting myself. So you read a happy book, you watch a happy movie. Like, I'm a big believer in distraction, but I also tell my patients the same thing. So for example, in the beginning, somebody had an ACL repair or something like that. I do want them to pay attention to what movements are causing pain because I don't want them doing any kind of damage. But at a certain point in somebody's recovery, you have to stop thinking about pain all the time, because if you're thinking every step you move, how am I moving, and is there pain, and did I feel a little bit doing this? Like, your brain is hearing this message of like pain, 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 and it's like almost going to give you pain. So you do have to learn to stop thinking about it all the time. So I completely agree with that. So,
I think you can even, when I was, so I did a TED talk that I think is how you found
huh?
on pain. And while I was doing this, I actually had a rotator cuff injury and impingement that was worse pain than when I broke my neck or my leg. I'm a klutz and I'm ADHD, and so so I was able to put a lot of the things I was learning to work. And one of the things that I was learning was that your brain can be a hypochondriac, and it's okay to say, yeah, I feel that, but that's not dangerous. And like literally tell my brain it's not dangerous, and then I could push forward. And now I've got knee pain when climbing things, and I know it's a bone spur, and I know that it's just going to be there. And so now if I'm going upstairs, I just find something else to look at or think about while I'm doing it, so that I just don't associate climbing with pain. You know, those associations can be very strong. One cool thing is that it's not instantaneous, your brain bringing in all of the memory and meaning and everything else at the same time for pain. Um, it actually goes through a process. And so it goes to the thalamus, which is, kind of the conductor, but then it goes to the switchboard. And the switchboard's the anterior cingulate cortex. And that is the place that's capable of the best distraction. And it doesn't solve problems, it figures out how it's going to approach problems. So if you give it something where there's cognitive dissonance, or where there's two different kinds of signals, one thing I like to tell people is, if you're going to have a painful procedure, find a sentence to read, but then don't read it as words, count how many of the letters have holes. That blows the anterior cingulate cortex's mind. And that makes it so that you feel 50 to 70% less pain, because the pain can't get routed to different areas of your brain that pull in all the memory and all of those associations. Instead, your brain's like, oh, wait a minute, I got to figure this puzzle first. So it depends on the kind of distraction, but it's very effective at not starting the cascade of your brain trying to remember this and enhance the pain next time to keep you from doing something that hurt.
Okay, I love all of these. So I want to tie in exactly how I got to this TED Talk of yours with my next question. And basically, somebody very close to me was suffering from pain for a while and had been taking, okay, now I'm not even remembering names of drugs, but had been taking like very strong painkillers.
Some opioid.
Thank you. That's exactly what I'm going for. Thank you. And so, and still continuing to feel so much pain. And I was very concerned because it had been about 6-7 weeks taking these things. And I know it is not good long term, very addictive. And I also, the way I feel, I'm the type of person that like, I'll dumb it down to make myself understand it so that anyone will understand. So the way I sort of feel, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is that if you take a medication, some of these very strong painkillers, it'll block your pain. And then as they wear off, it's almost like your pain is worse than it was before, so that you need more of it. And it becomes this like cycle that you cannot break out of. And I felt like this person was in a very bad cycle. So I went on to YouTube to try to find somebody talking about how pain is really coming from your brain. So what happens when people are, I'm sure you can explain it far better than the 2-year-old explanation I just gave you. What is actually happening, and should people ever take painkillers? Is there a time when it is good, and how long should that period of time be?
See, that's the great question, because people get very upset if I'm talking about opioids and not initiating them when you don't need to, because they're in chronic pain and they take them all the time, or they've got sickle cell or something where it's like this is the only thing that works for them and they don't need it all the time. But when they do, they don't want it taken away from them. So those guys get really, really aggressive because they're scared. But the reality is that think about again how you would design a pain system. If the system is designed to keep you safe, then if you are in a situation where you're under threat, you need to be able to turn off pain so that you can run away from the bear, so that you can get out from under the car, whatever. So opioids work on very ancient mu opioid receptor, these dopamine systems that cause you to still feel the pain, but not be incapacitated by it and not be afraid and not be worried about it. But because the body wants to constantly have its system working well, over time, which is actually about 72 hours, the receptors for opioids, if they're constantly bombarded, they start kind of going, okay, that's enough, and they go into the cell. And so they're no longer available. So then if you want to stimulate them, you have to give way more to get those receptors that are still out there to respond. So a cool thing about opioids is that, I mean, we're designed to have endogenous opioids. The opioids from pain, TENS units are actually hurting you just enough to stimulate endogenous opioids. Because if you
Right.
give an opioid blocker, TENS units don't work. So the best research answer to you is in the first 24 hours, opioids, the more you get, the less PTSD and the less chronic pain you have. So if you're in an emergency room, take the opioid. That's what it's there for. That's when it's going to work really well. The issue is if you're in an emergency room and you have a genetic predisposition to not processing dopamine the way most people do, it's called a reward deficient genetics. And about 12 to 18% of people have this genetic makeup. They will take opioids and they have never felt this good in their entire life. So then they are much more at risk of going on to continue to have opioids. I've got a couple things I've written up about this in Kevin MD, but one of them is there's a great study that looks at people who describe their first opioid experience and then whether they went on to become opioid dependent or not. And so feeling loose, relaxed in my limbs, feeling secure and happy, feeling like I'd never be this happy again. Those are things that if you feel this euphoria, it's different than just, oh, I'm relieved, pain went away. It's a euphoria. And so those are people who should try very hard not to take any home opioids at all. So there you go. So 3 days, the receptor's involute, but
Okay.
good data that it is actually helpful for broken arms, for burns, for things like that. For severe trauma, take the opioids the first 24 hours. It decreases your brain having PTSD and trying to lay down a bigger response to pain in the future to try to protect you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And I just want to chime in with where you were talking about how your body kind of remembers pain. And that's why when I'm working with people and trying to help rehabilitate them, I'm always telling them you're only allowed to go to the edge of pain. You're not allowed to go into bad pain. And then you come back out of whatever the movement is. You go back in again and out because you've got to get your brain to start to trust you and understand that it's safe to go back into this position now because there is no injury there. And as well, exactly like you said, people get married to their imaging. So people get so stuck on their, oh my God, I have a herniated disc and it's going to be like this for the rest of my life. Or I have compression fractures in my spine and I have pain, but yet it's like 3 months later. And okay, you might still have them, but the actual area is healed. So what the pain that you're having now is coming exactly like what you're talking about from that place of, I guess, remembrance or PTSD from the trauma of moving into that position.
Well, actually, so one thing, first of all, I will say that your previous comment about opioids, yes, if you keep taking opioids, your pain threshold will go down. You'll feel pain sooner, you'll feel pain more because your body's trying to balance it out. And it's like if you've got this constant pain blocker, the body needs, there you go, the body needs to have a certain amount of pain thresholds for it to, so it knows when to trigger. So if you keep on raising that threshold with opioids, your body is going to feel pain sooner. So that part's right. One of the best ways to deal with chronic pain is something called acceptance and commitment therapy. And the idea is, or ACT, the idea is when you've gone to the place that moving is not dangerous to you, or your stomach doesn't have anything wrong with it that you're going to be able to fix or that is dangerous to you, then you need to accept that you're going to have pain and commit to the things that you value. And instead of using your benchmark, how much pain am I in? Your benchmark is, did I do what I wanted to do today or this week or this month? What I value is picking up my granddaughter. I'm going to figure out how to pick up my granddaughter, even though it hurts. And I'm going to push through it and I'm going to reward myself based on how many times I get to pick up my granddaughter. So at the end of 6 months, studies with ACT have found that adults and children have lower objective measures of pain when they have been not paying attention to it because they've been focused on what they commit to. But the thing about the low back, because that's where I've been doing my research for the last 7 years, I'm sure there are some pain pathways, pain connectomes, these, pain systems that have been laid down. But anytime you get an acute injury of a muscle, that muscle is going to have all the muscles around it try to protect it, hold it stiff. Those muscles are usually, we call them strap muscles, or, they're not the main bicep lifting muscle.
Right.
They are the small muscles that are helping the fine movements. They're not plumbed for being the main muscle. And so they run out of blood flow and they get too little blood flow and they start getting the burn you get when you work out hard. They get the lactic acid, ischemia is the medical word, but they don't have enough blood flow to clear out the cellular debris from having to work so hard. And when that happens, particularly in the low back, what I think is causing chronic nonspecific low back pain, as soon as you try to hold still or you put a brace on, isolated muscles get fatty changes in about a week. And vibration stops them from forming. But those fatty changes, once they're there, are going to make it harder to get the blood flow you need. And then they also produce something called ceramides that just increase the pH, that makes it more inflamed, increases inflammation. So you get this loop of, I've damaged a muscle. It's got inflammation from being damaged. Then the muscles around it get inflammation from trying too hard to keep it still. And then all of them end up having damaged muscle fibers. And when they get damaged muscle fibers and not enough blood flow to them, then the fascia on top gets stuck. And fascia can either be in a gliding phase, and so it doesn't catch the pain nerves, or if it's in an elastic phase, if it's not juicy enough, then every movement is tugging these pain nerves. So when somebody has this happen 3 months later and they still have low back pain, probably the deal is those muscles haven't been moved enough and they don't have good enough blood flow and they're catching all those pain nerves with every movement, and then you get into a loop. So the way to do that is physical therapy. The way to do is to increase moving, and I am not a physical therapist, but knowing what I know now, especially with what I did to rehab after the rotator cuff without doing surgery, was just, if I knew from the doctor I wasn't going to damage it more, then I would push through the pain because it was just my goal is I want to be able to reach to here. I want to be able to reach to here. I want to be able to all of that kind of thing. Um, so I think that we pay a little too much attention to pain instead of paying attention to function and what we want our bodies to be able to do.
Okay, I love that. And maybe I'm going to tell you something you've heard, and I'm going to go a little bit off on a tangent just in terms of you talking about doing a low back study. I hope you don't mind. And this is stuff that people anybody who listens to this podcast has heard because this is my passion. Chronic low back pain, people with chronic pain that have gone everywhere to get treatment. Those are my people. Okay. These are the people that I love to treat because the end of the day, 99% of people, I'm going to say 98. I just throw out numbers because I don't do research. I have a whole list called Dara's list of things that she believes are true that one day research will prove. So I'm going to throw all those to someone like you who actually does do research. But I would say 98% of the people that come to me with back pain cannot breathe well, cannot truly stabilize well because there's a difference between stability and strength. And when people don't understand the difference, they train strength and cannot necessarily move through their hips well. They can't necessarily stabilize their scapula well. But if you retrain somebody, let's talk just about low back pain. If you retrain somebody to breathe and use the breathing to stabilize the right way and then teach them to load the hips the right way, literally, I think in my entire history that I can think of, maybe there are two people I can think of who didn't get better with that. And that's where I knew their pain was 100% mostly emotional and they needed to go then figure out that part. But when you do breathe the right way in order to create stability, you also turn on the vagus nerve. So you get all the benefits that people tell people with low back pain, they want them to meditate and breathe and all of this. It's just that people get up off of their yoga mat and don't realize that you should be diaphragmatically breathing all the time and not just during your hour yoga class. So that's my experience. So I agree with what you're saying. Most people aren't moving enough and that causes problems. But I find just even if I did nothing, even if I didn't look to see if things were out of alignment and I didn't do any manual work, when you teach somebody to breathe, most of their pain goes away because you also get this parasympathetic response that starts to block and starts to help them decrease pain and all of that. So that's been my experience in terms of, unofficial, just the people I treat.
And you're right. There's great data on breathing. There is great data on yoga. I think, and knowing what I've just even last week finished analyzing our TENS versus duotherm data. They're not only breathing, they're also moving. If you're standing up and you're doing a diaphragmatic breathing, then you're also moving some of those.
Yes, everything.
You're moving them.
100%.
And you're moving them, like you said, with the vagal nerve is stimulated. You've got oxytocin. Oxytocin is the safety hormone. Oxytocin is the opposite of vasopressin, which is the danger hormone. And so when you activate the vagal, you activate the good breathing, then you've got a lot of safety hormone, and that lets you be willing to trust your body and trust your proprioception. But you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the theories is that you have a neuromotor reflex that gets disconjugate, that gets unhooked. And so normally when you move a muscle, there's a flexion of one muscle, but then there's a relaxation of the other one so that you can move smoothly. So the idea is that after chronic low back pain, that your neuromotor reflex is not in sync. We looked at that, and in theory, if that's true, then vibration helps recalibrate and remyelinate the correct reflex, and it usually works better when it's on a loaded muscle, so the muscle is actually bearing weight and then the vibration is on it. And one Fattorini is the person in Italy who studies this, and he suggested that the studies show that about 3 times a day for 3 days gives the best result if you're trying to retrain a muscle. We looked at that, and we actually, with TENS for sure, there was no difference in people doing it 3 times a day for 3 days. With the chronic low back pain people using the vibration, the more sessions they had in the first 3 days actually did correlate with response. And overall, the more sessions they did correlated with response. I think what's going on is just that having something that decreases pain and increases blood flow while you're moving is more likely to make those muscles able to move without triggering the pain again. And again, I think a lot of it is actually the fascia. I think that the dehydrated muscles just tug on fascia, and as those muscles get restored, then the fascia also gets
Well, it's better.
gets more in the gliding hyaluronic acid state, and doesn't pull.
Perfect. I'm coming back to what you said about vibration in 1 second, because what I wanted to say is I do agree with you, is that when you actually get people breathing in a way they haven't and they're diaphragmatically breathing, you are absolutely moving your rib cage out, your stomach forward, out to the sides, your back to the back, your pelvic floor drops down. So you're absolutely, I usually use a balloon to explain it. Your diaphragm's on top. So when you breathe, if you push the top of the balloon, everything else gives way underneath. And usually, since people are breathing up here with every breath, they're either overloading the spine like that with every breath, so they're moving only in that direction, or alternatively, they're breathing and they may not be overloading the spine, but they're squeezing in this way. So now you're doing exactly what you said, and you're getting everything moving in ways it hasn't moved before, which are good for it. But you talked a lot now about vibration, and I think that's really important, because I think we should explain to people what vibration does in terms of pain and what are other things that you can do to block the pain receptors. I can teach my very dumbed down version of the gate theory of pain, but I'm sure you have a much better version than I do.
Uh, What's fun is that I think we've actually made some discoveries to explain what's really happening. So when it was a theory, the idea started actually in 1960, and this guy Wall found that if you put vibration on, you could decrease itch and pain. And so itch and pain are both on A delta nerves. They're the sharp, we call them nociceptors, but they're the ones that go sharp pain, watch out right now. What is happening is that there are certain receptors of movement in the body. So mechanoreceptors, they respond to force. And the ones that are causing the pain reduction in the gate theory. So after this, vibration does something. 5 years later, Melzack and Wall write up the gate control theory of pain. And their idea is something's happening in the spine. You get sharp pain, but if you've got other signals at the same time, pain, they negotiate, and then something else goes to the brain. Less pain, other signals. So they hypothesized that something was happening, but they didn't know what was shutting the gate on pain. So I can tell you what it is.
Great.
What it is for acute pain. Neuropathic pain is a little different, but what it is the Pacinian mechanoreceptor. That is the one that is a very fast responding. So it's in your joint capsules. It is light touch, but it's not. There are light touch nerves that will give up quickly. They're like, you don't want to constantly be feeling your clothes. But
Right.
the movement, the Pacinians, the ones that do movement and vibration, they are constantly aware of where your body is. So if you put vibration near a joint or you put vibration on them, they are the only touch nerves that go all the way up to the spine. And when they're there, they release a like a confetti cannon. It's like the message goes up with electrical current, but when it gets there, it's poof, this confetti cannon of neurotransmitters come out. And what they do is they stop the pain nerve from firing. They change the amount of electricity it takes to make the pain nerve fire, so the pain nerve just stops. And then when the pain nerve does fire and it sends out its own little confetti cannon, that same stuff, the adenosine, that same neurotransmitter, also blocks the receptors that are going to take it up to the brain. So you've got these two different ways that vibration says, shut up, everybody, listen to me. Don't listen to pain. I need you to listen to where your body is in space. Because again, it all comes down to safety and survival. And so if you burn your finger, you still need to be able to know where your hand is so you can take it away from the burn.
Right.
You've got to be able to be really aware of those things. So and now they call it spinal gating, if the cool kids do. But what's happening in spinal gating is that it's primarily the vibration nerve receptors that are, yes, vibration, but also just any kind of movement that they are sending a signal to tell the spine, don't pay attention to pain right now. We gotta make sure we're moved in the right place. And that is why the nerves don't fire, and also why what nerves do fire, they still are going to not transmit that signal to the brain.
Okay, that's a much better explanation than mine because I would have explained it wrong. Because I've always told people that the gate theory of pain is you have these nerves that are faster firing and that pain is a slower firing one, so that the sensation, whether it's the tens or vibration, actually reaches the brain faster than the other one. So I've been explaining it wrong all these years. So thank you. Thank you for that explanation.
I mean, I think I put that same explanation in my TED talk. A lot of
Okay.
the stuff is I've when I was hearing about people talking about spinal cord stimulators, this guy at a conference said, "Well, it's kind of a black box how it works," and I was intellectually offended. It's like if you're doing surgery on people for something you don't know how it works, then you're doing placebo until you can
Hmm.
prove otherwise. And so that's when I learned all this about the fact that once you're in the spine, it's not an electrical communication system, it's a neurotransmitter communication system. And also that TENS doesn't work that way. TENS is working on your opioids, your endogenous opioid system, your system, which is why if you take naloxone, TENS doesn't work, but vibration still does because vibration is just putting out this neurotransmitter. Vibration does a bunch of other things too. It actually in certain frequencies it releases oxytocin, so your safety hormone again. In other frequencies, it decreases one of the peptides that increases pain. So
Mm.
CGRP is calcitonin CGR, calcitonin gene related peptide. But it sort of it amplifies the substance P pain molecule. It makes it last
Right.
longer. So there's a frequency of vibration that decreases substance P by 26%. There's another frequency of
Wow.
vibration that just releases the things in the cells that repair because it's like pumping iron. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. If you push it harder and harder, then your body repairs. So, which is again why I think that the pain message may not necessarily be the place to tell people to stop physical therapy because there are times where their brain is overriding what could actually
Right.
be restorative for them.
Right.
And the other thing is vibration. Yeah, vibration. There's a very specific frequency for the pain blocking, confetti cannon, but there's a wide number of frequencies for increasing blood flow, for increasing bone growth, for increasing growth in general. There's a bunch of frequencies that do that. So there's a lot of good stuff.
So how do I have back pain. What am I using to give myself vibration? And I know that vibration is also there's vibration plates now that people are using for health benefits as well. And is that the same thing? And can you just talk a little bit about vibration in general? And I just want to say that you're doing this the reason I know you're doing this in a good way is that I know you've created something, but you actually don't even sound like you're trying to sell it. You're talking about vibration in general. But for me, people should know we're obviously going to put all of your links and everything because sometimes people feel like maybe I'm just trying to sell a product, and it wasn't at all. But I do want to understand exactly what it is you've done and how do I get the vibration, and should someone shake me like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about it much because I feel guilty because it has to go through all the regulatory part in the States. So I have about 600 of them and I cannot let them out until
Okay.
they're not on the market. This is what it is. This is Duotherm.
you know because I wanted to get one and I kept seeing that the back pain one, it's like it shows it to you but you couldn't buy it.
Yeah,
Okay. But explain what they are. I think it's important for people to hear what it is because you do have a lot of things that block pain. And you can even talk, if you'd like, about how I know what you did it for first, right? The buzzy, right? So feel free to talk about it however you want to bring it up and what you've done.
the first thing is let's go back to vibrating plates because we're talking about
Okay.
and the back pain. So those are usually about 20 hertz.
Okay.
And they do a couple things. First of all, if you stand on them and move a little bit, it starts retraining your brain that it's safe to move. So that's one thing. The next thing it is that it takes a little more effort to stand on a plate with it's vibrating than not. So you end up getting stronger muscles, and stronger muscles are more stable muscles. So you also decrease pain in that way. The there I mean I think that the field has come a long way in the last 10 years. When I started, one of the things that was frustrating was people weren't even recording the frequencies they were using, and people still don't record the amplitude. So it's like, how strong is it? How deep does it go? And then how fast is the frequency? Those things really matter. And different nerves are triggered by different frequencies. So The thing I started with was I really just poked people in my neighborhood until with different motors until I found one that seemed to be blocking pain the most. So this is the Buzzy unit. I do believe we have them in Israel,
Oh,
and
wow. Okay. Good to know.
we're in about 28 countries, but I am not always sure who our distributors are. And so this is a 200 hertz frequency. And so what you're seeing with this is that little motor is strong enough and intense enough that it can spread, particularly through bone or thicker tissues, but it spreads to the area around it to block pain. And it turns out if you put it for if you're doing it for a you know for um, Dupixent or a vaccine or anything that's going in your deltoid, you actually can put it with the motor part that way. Uh,
Hmm.
and so then you're jiggling the shoulder that's got all of the nerves around it because joints, right? So the biggest joint
Hmm.
close to it, you put it there and it decreases the pain of that injection 93%.
Wow.
Crazy because we used to tell people take Buzzy, put it where you're going to get the shot with ice and vibration, and then leave it for about 30 seconds, slide it up, and then do the shot.
Hmm.
That decreases pain 67%. So
Wow. Oh, okay. Wow.
just the vibration alone here activating all the Pacinians around the joint, that's wildly successful.
Listen, it's like iPhone 17, you're upgrading with the models with the as you find out more and more.
Well, and this is also the trick for putting it here was this pediatrician in Bogota, Colombia, who came up to me at a American Academy of Pediatrics meeting, and he said, "You're doing it wrong. Put it here. No pain every time." Um, and so I told my brain trust, and I said, "Somebody's got to study this. I don't study my own stuff because I don't want to have conflict of interest." The duotherm I did because I was funded by the NIH. But if I don't have, but I the data collection was going on in Washington D.C. and I was in Atlanta. Just I have to be really far away to make sure there's no bias. But somebody in Turkey did the study where the 93% versus 67. So then one of my colleagues used the device to not take opioids after a total knee replacement. So we came out with a whole bunch of basically, the same motor, slightly different shape. So it's called Vibracool. And so this one is the Vibracool, and these are available, and they're like $50 in the States. But you can put it on a hip, you can put it on a shoulder, and ice is really the best for inflammation. But
Hmm.
when you have chronic pain, you've got spasm and you have decreased blood flow. So that's where you want to use heat. People are, yeah. What do you tell people about the old heat versus cold
So
question?
with me, very much, I definitely, let's say you sprain your ankle. Definitely use compression. I definitely believe in compression. I don't like ice as much because it decreases blood flow. You don't want too much swelling, but we do want healing. So if you decrease too much swelling, then you don't get the healing because the swelling brings both. So I'm not a big icer, but at the end of the day, if someone loves ice, they should use ice. And whether it's that emotional, whether it's, but also go by me. Like I do not believe in cold plunging for myself. I hate it, but I could sit in a sauna every single night. So, you know what I'm saying? Like I prefer heat because I feel like it increases blood flow to the area. And once it's been a few days, but if somebody, even if it's chronic pain and they're like, oh, ice makes me feel great, definitely use the ice. Like, I definitely go by what feels good to the person.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Dara. I think it's your body is going to be fine at telling you what is good and not good. The nice thing about having, so this was the Vibracool thing. So this is one of the ones. It's same 200 hertz frequency, but so you've got this. This is increasing blood flow to the point
Wow.
that if it's on a sprained ankle, you actually need to make sure your compression's good, or it'll swell up more. But you can use that and then put the ice under it, and the ice freezes solid because you've got to have ice that's going to conduct the vibration.
Okay.
This actually goes to the different one because I don't have any ice packs around because I didn't really plan on it.
Oh, no worries.
But they look
Okay.
like that. So
Okay.
it's long, but it's really thin, and one of the things we did was I calculated the thermal energy so that it can't give frostbite to even a baby. It's so thin, but it does freeze solid. So then it'll melt in about 20 minutes. And I think most the there's really great cryotherapy review that shows there's only two people on record that have caused nerve damage from too much icing, and
Hmm.
their sensitivity grew back too. Um, there's still this whole, ice decreases blood flow. If you pair it with vibration, that obviates the problem. So we came up with cryovibration in 2006. Didn't get the patent until 2012, but every cryovibration for pain is something that is because we
Hmm.
did the work and we figured that out. But I agree too. I think that ice for the first 12 to 24 hours, and then
Hmm.
after that, then you want to try to increase the movement, and so that's when I recommend heat. So it sounds, exactly the same thing, coming at it from different perspectives, but came up with the same answer.
Do you have physical therapists that are purchasing this to use in office with their patients, or is it more people at home purchasing it as well?
Yeah. Well, right now, the biggest distribution is in reducing opioids before surgery. So doing some prehab. So there's a group called Goldfinch Health in the States that is dun-dun-dun. So what they do is they've got a kit for before you go to surgery, and they give out this Vibracool. So it's got both hot and cold and a pocket that holds it, and you can put it on a belt or you can put it on a TheraBand, but you can position it wherever the pain is before surgery so that you can get a little extra reps in trying to build up some strength before, and then using this instead of opioids after surgery.
My
So
gosh, I love that.
the about 10,000 of these have probably been given away, and those are mostly done through orthopedic offices. Um, we did our duotherm studies in chiropractors' offices, and
Okay.
and then we have one that is for specifically you can clean it and you can give the patient the smaller ice pack. So we've got the VibraCool Pro that way people can try it in their office. The physical therapist
Hmm.
uses it as a modality. For it's got these little guys that have been tested for myofascial trigger points. So you
Hmm.
can actually like, dig it into the myofascial trigger point while it's vibrating,
Amazing.
or
Interesting.
or you can put it on and it was as effective as decreasing the pain from the myofascial trigger points as manual therapy. So
It
there,
will save your hands
and you save
a
your hands.
lot. Yeah.
Exactly the thing as you save the hands. Um, some of the heavier massage gun things, the amount of vibratory strength that's going to your nerves is going to cause hand nerve syndrome. I mean, it does damage nerves. You have to have the amplitude less than 0.3 meters per second squared to not have any risk of nerve damage. But that's what we did. It's very low amplitude to do that. But I will be honest, we have not been able to get the Medicaid and Medicare to acknowledge that what we're doing is neuromodulation and that what we're doing is restorative. And so they say, no, it's distraction and it's not for pain, it's for comfort. So because it's not covered, even if it's FSA, even if it's covered by insurance, by FSA, by health plans, if it's not covered by insurance because it doesn't have a code, it makes it so much harder for anybody to get access in the States. It's one of the reasons I actually made Duotherm so that we could go through the most rigorous process, because then this interactive mechanical stimulation, having two motors that are interacting, then you get the entire area just bathed with all of these different frequency interactions. And that's where the restorative and that's where the regeneration comes from.
Okay, so that's incredible because also it sounds like it would cut down tremendously on drug company profits and things because here somebody could get this machine, whatever it costs, but that sounds like any time like they can use it and then they have it in their house. And then if something else happens or they wake up one day with pain, they can just use it and it will cut down on the need for drugs and for things that have to go through your digestive tract and to your liver and your kidneys. And like it sounds like people's Advil that they could have at home and maybe be able to use less Advil.
Yeah, yes, although I'm kind of a big Advil fan,
Okay.
I think the big message for me is that there's always something else to try. And so in the one study that was done with this, because the orthopedists in this country want $500,000 to do a study, we have 128 randomized controlled trials on Buzzy now that people have done for free all over the world. But orthopedists want to get paid $500,000, so there's not as many studies on the frequency for that. But I think the thing that's the answer, so the one pilot we had reduced opioids 35%. I think the thing that matters is there's always something else to try. And so if you take the take home message is you don't need to take home the opioids. Instead, you need to know what to expect so you don't feel like you're in danger. So you need to know, what day is my pain going to be the highest post-op? When is the block going to wear off? And accept
Right.
that. And like you said at the very beginning, the bad kind of pain, like what does the sour, damaging pain feel like versus just sore? If it can be hard to know. And so trying to understand that difference before, so you can go, okay, what's it going to feel like if it's worse pain than you expect on the second day? And that answer could be take an ibuprofen and a Tylenol together and then wait for an hour. And then, do you still have that same kind of character of pain? But this is something that we put out. So it's a workbook. Yeah, there we go. So it's, things like sleep is medicine. So
Yeah.
it's, how do you do your melatonin? How do you do your mask so that you don't see it? How do you do ashwagandha? Just all of the different kind of things there. Write down what works for you. And then physical things, or write down what works for you. And then the biggest is the brain body. We talked about oxytocin. We talked about dopamine. There are activities you can do that give you all of those neurotransmitters. So know that you can get oxytocin by gardening. Know you can get dopamine by planning to watch something funny. So by making a schedule for when you're going to have the day two is the worst pain for a lot of different things. When you know you're going to have that, then activate dopamine, activate oxytocin. Plan these activities. Plan to talk to somebody on the phone. Plan to have a visitor. And so this is a free download on our website. What works for pain, resources. I think it's Paincare Labs download, Paincare Labs resources downloads, and then what works for pain. We've also got a what works for needle fear, but we did a lot of work to get to evidence-based, free ways that people
Love it.
can plan for something after surgery, or when they know they're going to have painful recovery, so they can get through it without taking opioids and with moving more.
First of all, I love that. I love everything you've said. And I think that there are, like, exactly like you're saying, there are so many things. And I won't get too involved, but just briefly, what do you think of things like grounding or, different types of things like that? Have you found any benefit, or maybe it's not something you've looked at, or?
Yeah, there's so Helfer tapping is not grounding, but Helfer tapping has been tested explicitly with Buzzy, and Buzzy was significantly better than Helfer tapping, is significantly better than control. I think it's just, yes, it's an all of the above. I mean, grounding again is you're gonna get theta waves. This is a really cool study. Catherine Kerr did this. She was like, all right, so meditation decreases chronic pain and meditation decreases depression. What's the deal? How can that happen? And so what it is that that doing a body inventory meditation, I'm thinking about my toes, thinking about my ankle, I'm thinking about my hip, by then I'm ADHD and out the door. But
Me too.
I don't think I've ever done my hips, to be perfectly honest. But in theory. But doing that, the people who did that were better able to filter unwanted stimuli after practicing that for a few weeks. So I think that's the thing about grounding too, is that when you are uh, getting rid of all the external stimuli that are making you worried or making you sense pain or pay attention to it, that the practicing of that will also help it'll increase your ability to dampen pain signals.
Okay, I think that's great. And I want to just say, because I don't want to keep you on forever either, I'm sure you've got a busy day. But basically, we talked about distraction, we talked about vibration. Is there anything else that's good in terms of pain without painkillers? Meaning, is there any other thing you can suggest? We talked about breathing, because that's my favorite thing. Perfect. Okay, you're 100%
Yeah,
right.
there's literally 150 easy different things that I've looked at the literature, I've looked at it, and it's knowing there's always something else. The best
I love that.
I learned was from a woman named Regina Yoakum. She's a child life worker in Wisconsin, and she has crippling rheumatoid arthritis, and she's had it since she was a kid. And she said the thing is, there are very few pain medicines that you can use. There are even fewer medicines that can reverse the problem, things that can actually stop the progress of rheumatoid arthritis. But so there's very few curative. There are slightly more pain medicines. There's a lot more supplements. Magnesium is, oh my gosh, can't believe I didn't mention magnesium because oxytocin requires magnesium to work. And
Okay.
50% of people in the States are magnesium deficient. If you don't have magnesium, you're not getting your oxytocin, you're not getting your parasympathetic help to make you feel less afraid. So it's an anti-inflammatory, it's a neuro-anti-inflammatory, it's a NMDA blocker. It makes sure opioids, like you can cut down your opioid dose around surgery by a third if your magnesium's optimized, all that. So anyway, I digress. Back to Regina. So
Hmm.
Regina said, there's a broader number of supplements that can help and help you get good sleep. But there's an infinite number of activities and physical and mental things that I can do to deal with my pain. And knowing there's always something I haven't tried, and there's always a combination I haven't tried, and I can do them in a different order. I can do them, I can layer them, I can use heat, then cold, then relaxation. I can use massage and then hand holding and then ashwagandha, just so knowing there's always something else, having that hope that can get you past the worst moments.
That's the biggest thing is exactly what you said is having that hope because I believe, and again, Dara's list of things she believes, Dr. Baxter will prove is that, people with hope, when you have hope and when you have optimism, you are, in my opinion, far likely to do better than somebody who is more negative and who, gets stuck down where they are and can't see that hope for the future. Because if you don't have that hope or you don't have that optimistic view of things getting better, then you're stuck. So I think that was an important thing that you just said. And I tell people this all the time, you can speak to somebody who looks like the fittest person in the world, right? I always say it doesn't matter what it looks like, it matters how it functions. So you can look at the fittest person in the world. Like if exercise alone was great for preventing pain, then why do I have so many athletes as patients? Okay. Or people coming out of the gym as patients? Because the end of the day, some people will also pay attention to the smallest little thing. And then you could see this little old man who looks like the hunchback of Notre Dame. He's all bent over and twisted, and you'll say to him, how are you today? He's like, oh, I'm great. I feel amazing. And you're looking at him and you see what his spine looks like. And this is a person that should be suffering in pain, yet he has none. And then this person that looks like fit body is in agony because maybe he's got the tiniest herniated disc. And so often people's symptoms don't even match the imaging that you see. In either way, either it looks huge and they feel great, or it's like the most minutest little tiny thing and they feel like the world's about to end because people do feel pain differently.
Well,
So,
and when we are also now paying more attention to the MRIs of the amount of fatty changes in the patient.
okay.
And so, and knowing, and I strongly believe that we're going to be able to look at the shear of the fascia and
Hmm.
see whether or not it's stuck or not stuck. And so then one thing, just taking a lot of water can decrease pain by 15%. And probably it's because it's changing the fascia from
100%.
the pain nerves. But yeah, I think and optimism has been positively correlated with improved pain. Maybe if you're optimistic, you push a little harder, you try to move a little bit more, you get a little bit more mobility, a little bit less proprioceptive loss. I think, again, going back to acceptance and commitment therapy. If you accept that life is pain, sweetheart, and anyone who says different is trying to sell you something, if you accept that pain isn't the enemy and pain isn't danger, that pain is your protection system, then it's a little easier to coexist.
Okay, that's great. So let me ask you, because I feel like this is like the next endpoint that fits into things that we're talking about. What does spirituality mean to you? And do you think that having any kind of spiritual practice in whatever form, it doesn't have to mean God, will that help somebody maybe with their pain as well?
Again, going back to the literature, any kind of connection is going to increase your oxytocin. So whether it's connection to a higher being, connection to people in your synagogue, connection to people who are around you, or a social group, the more connection you have, the more oxytocin and the less fear and the less pain you have. So that's just there. Um, I'm currently kind of in a place where I believe that our souls are doing a portage. And so you get an opportunity to be in a meat suit for a while, and that's good and that's bad and it's terrible and it's exhilarating and lovely. And then having been around a lot of people when they die, you can feel when the soul leaves, and it's a tangible difference. So anyway, so I think that it's a grand and great opportunity to be given this little brief portage in a body made of meat that is able to experience everything good, bad, and we should be joyful about that.
I agree. I really agree with you. And what's the best way for people to find you? If
Please don't, I'm so busy.
how about your company? Just the
Right,
website?
right. So Pain Care Labs is the company for Buzzy and Vibracool. We tried to be as honest as possible in our marketing, so you can also Google Buzzy Helps because we're not going to say anything eliminates pain. Buzzy Helps. Vibracool.com. Vibracool.com. That's easy. Uh, and then Harmonic Scientific is where to keep up with the progress on duotherm.
Okay, great.
So, because harmonic interactions of different wavelengths, and then because it's science, so harmonic scientific. But those are the best places. The TED Talk is how your brain hacks pain,
Loved it.
and then again on the Pain Care Labs, I'll give you the link. But the download for the What Works for Pain and What Works for Needle Fear are free downloads available there.
Amazing. We're going to link everything for everyone. Thank you so much for taking this time to speak to me. This was excellent. This was just everything I wanted people to hear. I think it's so important.
Well, this is a delight, and I'm so glad that it's so nice talking to physical therapists because and most of why people go to doctors is pain, and physical therapists know how to treat it, and doctors often don't. So it's great to share ideas with you.
Thank you so much. Hey everyone, I am so excited to have formerly Idan Green, but now for the first time, Idan Yarmish with us. This is the first time she's been with us since her wedding in February, and I'm so excited because all the Torah we hear from Idan is always fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to what you have to say about this. I feel like pain is such a good topic.
It really is. Unfortunately, there's so much to say on it, but fortunately and unfortunately, because it's the nature of life, and I love that even from the medical perspective. I listened to the TED Talk that the medical side of this podcast had released, and a big part of what she was saying was that pain is a part of life, and it's a tool, and it's a beautiful part of that. And I think the Torah, if anything, recognizes the most central parts of life and gives us light and direction how to understand that. Like, not to just ignore it, not to just put it to the side, but rather how to utilize it, absorb it, and make it something greater than what it presents itself to be. And I think that that's like a key thing, especially in this week's parsha. Actually, it's Del Parsha Bechukotai, and it's interesting because I started looking into the parsha, not related to this podcast, but I got a really powerful text message this week from a friend who said, Idan, my rabbi just passed away, and I always found that, like, whenever we used to learn together, and she said there was always some Easter egg, she called it, in the Torah that helped us understand what's going on. She's like, I'm just so heartbroken. I need something, chizuk from the Parsha. And I was like, oh gosh, I hope there's something there. But there always is, because that's the incredible divine intelligence of the Torah, is that it's a living, breathing being, and it goes through life with us, and we experience the world through the Torah. So there's not anything that it doesn't touch upon and it doesn't speak about. And so pain in that, and physical pain, emotional pain, and medicine should know. And if it doesn't know, the Torah knows that the physical and the mental and emotional pain are completely intertwined. And the Parsha speaks about the laws of Shemitah and the laws of Yovel. One could say that as like, okay, that's like dry halacha, like how do we really understand it? Just laws about agriculture and when to farm, when not to farm, how much to take when you're farming. The truth is, though, that the common denominator is that rest is essential, and the ability to heal is essential. And we know that there's so many allegories and realities of that in Torah and Tanakh, that there's a certain amount of time for action. You know, when we're planting, we're seeding, we're working during the week, Shabbat is a time of rest. And a couple is engaging in holy connection, and then there's a time that they don't touch. There's beautiful opportunities for rest, because there's an understanding that in life, all opportunities, all experiences need to have off time. And not everything can be working all the time, which means that it speaks to our systems, our body system. It needs to rest. Otherwise, there will be a reaction. And I think that is articulated through pain, and that everything has perfect boundaries. And the Torah speaks about that extensively, whether it's through halacha, whether it's through time, whether it's through prayer, through relationships. Holy boundaries is what keeps us in a pristine state. And so the idea that pain is this alert that says, you're doing too much, right? Like picking up a weight, it's too much. It's saying that your body or your experience needs to pause, needs to rest. And there's just a very cool idea also linguistically that I think could be a beautiful anecdote for this idea of pain, is that there's an idea, I guess, that could be explained, that the moach, the lev, and the kavod are all aspects of our experience.
Just say what those are in English, if you don't mind.
Of course. Moach in Hebrew is brain, lev is heart, and kavod is, you could translate it to honor. I'm going to use it as ego in this scenario. And the ideal state is having them in that order. First the brain, first the logic, then the emotions, and then the honor, then my ego, right? And if we take those letters and put it together, we get melech, which means king, which means royal in Judaism. And so that shows that the Torah wisdom in these situations is that we have to put our brains first, thinking about the situation, understanding it to the full extent. And that could also mean an emotional intelligence. Doesn't just mean raw and rational and linear thinking. But then the deeper inner layers of an emotional experience is the lev, is the heart, and that's important, but it shouldn't come first, right? That could lead to being irrational or jumping to conclusions based on emotion. And the last one, kavod, meaning choosing how we live our life based on our ego, should not be first. It should always come last. And a way to fully see that in fruition is how how the opposite is so negative, is that if you take the letters kaf, which is the first letter of kavod, of that ego, then you take lamed, the lev, the heart, the emotional experience, and then the mem, it comes out to klum, to nothingness. And right, so you have the opportunity of being the highest version of yourself, which is malchut, of kingship, royalty, higher power, highest sense of being. And putting the ego first is leading to nothingness, right? So the lower parts of ourselves. And I think pain is also that beautiful catalyst that can allow us to choose which one, right? Pain in our life can take us to a place of malchut, of the greatest self-evaluation and growth and enrichment. And it also could take us to the lowest places, when we lead with our ego, right? That I was hurt, I'm offended, I'm going to take it out on that person, they don't deserve X, Y, and Z. And then that's already bleeding into the emotions. And the last part of my mind is like, wait, let me look at this, situation with a rationale approach. But pain is universal, and pain will always be a tool that was given to us, and it shouldn't be something that we run away from, just like the work, just like the rest, right? Both of them come in perfect unison, in divine design, and they're really a part of our reality in a way that only God could have placed it. And Rachel Goldberg Polin, actually, I listened to, she did like a 60 Minutes with Anderson Cooper, and she was talking about her book that she had written. I haven't had the zechut yet to read it, but I just find her one of the most inspirational people ever. I call her my rabbi a lot of the times because really she has such wisdom to impart on the world, and it comes from a place of pain. And she's right, and it's like how could that be? But she has literally taken the pain and turned it into pure gold and pure divine enlightenment that she's shared with the world. And she doesn't run away from the pain. She doesn't, hide her tears. She doesn't hide the pain that she has experienced. And I think that it's such a valuable lesson. And she explains herself that life really boils down to pleasure and pain. And I think it takes us back to that parsha of the Shemitah year and Yovel of like working the land and enjoying and basking in that, the fruit of your labor, the joy of your work. And also trusting in what might be the pain and fear of rest, because as much as we think that rest is so grand, it also leads a lot of surrender and trusting something else, someone else, and that could cause a lot of pain, because the unknown is very scary. But we have so many examples throughout stories of Tanakh, through the stories that we're living today, right? The reality that we're living in, the characters of Tanakh that are on our Instagram feed, and the people that we get to see and interact with, and the people that we could be. That's also a beautiful opportunity that we have living in the painful times that we are in. We have an opportunity, right? It's a beautiful, mysterious, cryptic, what in the heck is going on? But it really is just an opportunity. And so I want to bless myself and everyone listening that we choose the road of malchut when faced with pain, that we choose the road to royalty, to a higher sense, a bigger, broader perspective, a deeper trust, and please God then that we're able to lift others up with that and turn our pain into beauty and greatness.
Yeah. First of all, amen. That was beautiful.
Amen.
Thank you. And second of all, it is true. We see historically at times of our nation's biggest pain, that's when we come together. That's when we create so many things that are really, really good, And we don't want to have to go through the pain to get there. But unfortunately, it seems to be something that keeps repeating itself, So maybe we also need to figure out why we keep getting some of the same lessons again and again. And for anybody listening who might not know who Rachel Goldberg Polin is, she's the mother of of Hirsch Goldberg Polin, who was a hostage who was killed in Gaza. And yeah, it's unfortunate that from pain we see so many, lessons that were learned, from all the hostages who were in Gaza and who were suffering and in pain. So many of them came back. They found God. So unfortunately, sometimes you have to go through pain to come out the other end.
It's true.
So I think that was a great message.
Thank you. And I think even just on the point that you're saying is that it's so horrible. I don't know why things happen to people. I'm not even going to try and explain that. But it's a wake-up call for the people, or for myself, I guess, that I haven't even experienced a decimal of that pain. And so
hopefully you should never have to, but yes.
Amen. No one should, really, no one should. But it's like, okay, I can witness another person's pain, and what can I do with my empathy? How can I improve myself, the world around me? Like we shouldn't have to use the pain, but if there's going to be pain, let's use it.
Right. Absolutely. Well, as always, Idan, this was wonderful. Thank you so, so much. I really appreciate it. And Mazal Tov.
Thank you.
Hey, guys. Welcome to our little final section of questions I wish I had asked during the interview and missed out on. So the couple of questions that I went back and I asked Dr. Baxter were, number one, did she think that the device that she's created, whether it's Buzzy or one of the other vibration devices, would help a woman who is in labor? Now, I think that's very appropriate for so much of our audience. And the other question was, if you chose to use like some type of a vibratory device, how long would it give lasting pain relief? So in terms of labor, she told me that she didn't really know how much it would help. She herself had tried hypnobirthing. Again, you guys know how much I am into breathing, and I know that breathing, not even any specific breathing that someone taught me, just making up my own breathing helped me a lot. But she really wasn't sure in terms of the vibration device, would that really give more pain relief or not? But I would say as long as it can't hurt you, and again, you have to look at, are there guidelines on their site? As long as it can't hurt you, it would be something I would be willing to try. I know that during one of my births, I actually, when I was first in PT school, must have been my third child when I was in my first year PT school, I actually borrowed and tried a TENS unit. Let's put it this way. I actually did not have anything, no epidural, no anesthesia. She was my most natural birth. So I guess the TENS unit did help a little bit. So maybe this vibration unit, I don't see why you couldn't try it. But if I'm saying something wrong, check the warning labels on the device. And in terms of how long you would get lasting pain relief, if you're using the more simple device like the Buzzy, now the original Buzzy, I believe, was created, and you'll hear this talked about, to help children so that they don't really feel the needle during vaccinations. They have a few different types where you could put it on your knee and on your arm or your shoulder in different places. And she said that typically those units in terms of pain help for about 4 hours afterwards. Now, listen, I think that people usually get somewhere between 4 and 6 hours. Maybe, yes, there are medications that last 8 hours. But the beauty is you could use this as much as you want. And it's not going to have those horrible side effects that many other drugs might have. And I apologize. I should have looked it up. But the new larger device for the back, I forgot what it's called. I'm really sorry. I should have looked that up. Dr. Baxter said actually has shown effects up to a few days, like being able to help for a few days. So I also believe people are different, and what, may not work for one may work for somebody else. And so do your own research. Hear what we've got to say here. Go look at the website. There's going to be links. And if you're somebody who's suffering in chronic pain, I absolutely believe trying some of these techniques are worth a try. Thanks for listening. Shabbat Shalom. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Please seek guidance from a trusted healthcare professional. By listening to this podcast, you release Holy Health and all of its guests from all liability. I'd like to thank Yakir Abelow for editing this podcast.